Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. Last night, Kyle Wright took the mound for the first time since May. So, did you know the last time Kyle Wright pitched, the Braves had 20 wins? So, it's been a minute. They had 95 entering last night's game. So, yeah, I mean, the initial results, listen, 3 runs, 6 hits, 6 runs. He loads the bases with nobody outs. He gives up 4 runs. Like, it wasn't great. He was spiking that breaking ball, which if you've watched this show and you watch me talk about what was wrong with Kyle Wright and Gwinnett when he was struggling, it was that breaking pitch. And listen, it's control, it's mechanics, it's getting back out there. That's really what I was looking forward to. And that's what he said after the game. He's like, there weren't a lot of positives, but there was one positive. And it's, hey, I got back out there. I got, I got my teeth wet. Like, you're back out there. You're back out there. So I think that's big. And then listen, he's going to have 3 more opportunities the rest of the year to prove that he can get back to where he was or somewhere close to it, to where he can help this team in the postseason. And I think that's what the Braves are focused on. Listen, he was only going to throw 60 or 70 pitches. He threw 61 last night. I liked where he was with his pitch count. I liked how he settled in and got guys out in the second and third innings. But yeah, it was rusty. And that's pretty much what I expected. If he had gone out there and tossed 4 or 5 scoreless, like that would have been amazing. But against this Phillies lineup, I mean, they tossed him right into the fire without much, warning or anything. I don't know how early he knew he was going to be starting this game because they called him up just before the start of the game. But listen, he got back out there. I think that's the big thing here. He's healthy. And then we got 3 more starts to see if he can shake that rust off. And I think that's plenty of time. We had to see him against major league opponents.
Yeah, talk about being thrown into the fire. This is one of the best lineups in baseball. And I think he did about it what I would expect. Rust was obviously a factor in all of this. And his demeanor after the game was encouraging because he was not discouraged by this outing at all. He was just kind of happy to get through it healthy and get where he needs to be to make his next start. That's all he's looking forward to, is to make his next start. And for the Braves, it really doesn't matter what happened. The division is pretty much locked up. Sure, we would love to, sweep the Phillies, but that's just not, probably not going to happen. The Phillies are a very good baseball team. Again, we've been saying it since the All-Star break. It's about the only team that really scares us in the National League. And you saw it right there. They have power in the lineup. And Kyle Wright got a taste of it. For the Braves, though, I mean, we're really just looking toward October. We're building toward the playoffs. And for Kyle Wright, all that really means is kind of showing Anthopoulos, showing Snicker that you could contribute in some capacity. It's maybe not as a starter. I don't want to say it's not going to be as a starter, but just out of the bullpen, a long relief guy. Whatever it is you can do to help this team win in the postseason, that's all Kyle Wright wants to do. Sure, we would love him to start some games. He was the only guy against the Phillies last year that showed any kind of fight. I mean, Max Fried was 6, but Estrada got dinged up. Charlie Morton got dinged up. And I think Kyle Wright had 6 scoreless or something like that. So, yeah, of course, we would love that Kyle Wright to be back. The fact of the matter is that's, slim chances that's going to happen. All that we're looking forward to is him to contribute in some capacity.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the NLDS, I know I've said it time and time again on this show, but like you said, you're not going to need him in that first round playoff series as a starter. But as a reliever, I mean, listen, we don't know what is going on with Jesse Chavez. I mean, the guy still hasn't started a rehab assignment. At this point, I don't know if he's even going to be available for the postseason. You can say the same thing about Nick Anderson. We saw the Braves. Dylan Lee has struggled since he's gone back. He got optioned back to Gwinnett. He's now questionable to be a part of that postseason roster. So the back end, outside of those 4 or 5 guys, I guess you could throw Kirby Yates in there. Those 5 guys that are absolute locks. I mean, those guys are locks, and those guys those guys that are going to get innings in the postseason. Whether you like Kirby Yates or not, it's going to be him, Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, AJ Minter, Rossell Iglesias. That's probably your top 5. After that, there's a lot to be desired. I mean, I like Michael Tonkin. He's obviously up there as a lock. But as far as like multi-inning guys and guys that can give you some run in that NLDS series, I think Kyle Wright's at the top of the list. So these 3 starts, I think that's definitely going to be his role. And then listen, if he succeeds in that role, because there's going to be a point in that NLDS, especially if they play the Phillies, where some guy doesn't give you some length and you're going to need a guy to go out there and give you 2 to 3 innings. I think Kyle Wright's a perfect option to do that. If he looks very good in that role, maybe you consider in the NLCS giving him one of those starts. I'm not saying it has to be. Maybe he sticks in that role. Maybe he doesn't. But your options are open. Listen, by the time October 7th rolls around and the start of the NLDS, Kyle Wright should be fully stretched out. He should be fully able to give you innings and in any way that the Braves need him to. And I definitely think he has a very good chance of making this NLDS roster, probably out of the bullpen. but still he can give this team something in the playoffs. He's good enough, but we got to see it over these next 3 starts. So these next 3 starts are really where you can start to take maybe the stat line a little more serious. Maybe not even next start, but those final 2 starts, you can look at those stat lines and be like, all right, is this guy ready to give you innings in a playoff series? But still, right now, that was a 4th rehab start. Like there was no way in hell that the Braves would give him that start if this was June or July. He would have been in Gwinnett for maybe another month, especially with him coming off a second shoulder injury. They just had to throw him into the fire. They had to get him back out there. Like you said, I think he had the right attitude after the game. I think he even said something along the lines of, I just wanted to pinch myself, the fact that I was out there. So it's good to see. He's got 3 more opportunities to prove himself, and we could take a lot more out of those outings. This one was a 4th rehab start, and I think we saw what we needed to see. He's got some rust. Now let's see what he can do the rest of the way.
Yeah, the Braves wouldn't have done this with just anybody. Max Fried is in this same category where they're comfortable with Kyle Wright and his mentality of, hey, you're probably going to get hit up here, but we need you up here. We need to see what you can do, and we need to see if you can contribute in any way. And looking forward to the postseason, if I'm Brian Snicker, I'm not messing up a good thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You got 4 starters right now. You got 2 horses, and Charlie Morton is, he's been on fire in his past 4 or 5 starts.
So is Bryce Elder.
And I was about to say, and Bryce Elder has bounced back in a huge way after everybody in the rotation struggled there for a little bit. Yeah, we would all love Kyle Wright. If we're talking about, 2022 Kyle Wright, of course he's going to be right there. He'll probably be your 3rd guy with Charlie Morton as the 4th. But that's just not the reality. And I think that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You only need, you've talked about it at length. The Braves could get by with just Max Fried and Spencer Strider in the DS. And then even in the CS, you only need 4 starters. And obviously we all want Kyle Wright back. But the fact of the matter is, that's probably not going to happen in terms of a starter. I think that you've nailed it on. You've called it weeks ago that I think the role he's going to be, or he could assume, is going to be out of the bullpen. And it has more to do with, it has everything to do with what the starting rotation is doing right now and less to do with Kyle Wright. Obviously we're going to be paying attention to Kyle Wright and want him to be back to what he was in 2022. But the rotation right now is just as strong as ever. It doesn't, he'd have to blow the Braves away to take a start away from Bryce Elder, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I think that role that Kyle Wright could potentially fill, that multi-inning role, is going to be, especially maybe not in the NLDS, maybe all the guys shove and maybe you get out of there with a quick series, or maybe you lose in a quick series. I don't know. Maybe you don't necessarily need him in that 5-game series, but in a 7-game series, that role is a very important one because one of those 4 starters is not going to give you length. And with this lineup, especially where you're capable of getting 6 runs later in the game, like if you fall behind 4-1 or 5-1, like you're not out of it with this lineup. You need a guy that can keep you in this game. That role is especially important. And even if it's a 4-3 game and the guy's just struggling, like that role is going to be a prominent one, and it's a prominent one for every team and every postseason. And Kyle Wright's a perfect guy to fill it, and he's filled it before. This isn't anything new. Back in 2021, you look back, and I know he had a terrible 2021 series, but guess what? He came in and relieved Dylan Lee, and I think it was game 4, gave the Braves 4 or 5 strong innings, 4 strong innings. The Braves win that game like 2-1. That's a very, very important role that the Braves are going to use at some point in the playoffs, probably multiple times. So, yeah, I agree. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that doesn't mean that his role is going to be diminished in any way or less important. It's a very important role, and I think he's the perfect guy to fill it. Coming up after the break, we are going to talk about the Jets and the Bills.